Commander Jake Morrison stared out at the endless black of space through the bridge windows of Earth's pride. The exploration ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, mapping the empty regions between star systems. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The galaxy was huge, and humanity needed to know what was out there. "Commander, we're getting something strange on the sensors," said Lisa Webb from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer and had sharp eyes for anything unusual. Her fingers moved quickly across her control panel as she tried to make sense of the readings. Jake walked over to her station and looked at the display. Numbers and lines danced across the screen, but none of it made sense to him. What kind of strange? There's something big out there. Really big. But it's not moving, and it's not giving off any heat or energy. Lisa frowned at her instruments. It's like it's dead, but the metal readings are off the charts. Ryan Cole looked up from the engineering station. He was a thin man with steady hands and a mind for machines. Could be a derelict ship. Maybe someone had engine trouble and got stranded. Amy Torres, who handled communications, shook her head. "I'm not picking up any distress signals, not even old ones. Whatever it is, it's been quiet for a long time." Jake made his decision quickly. "Change course. Let's take a look." The ship turned toward the mysterious object. As they got closer, their sensors began to paint a clearer picture. The thing was massive, easily the size of a small moon. It was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars. "My God," whispered Dr. Kevin Price from behind. Them. The Zen archaeologist had been studying ancient ruins on distant worlds for most of his career. He rarely got excited about anything, but now his eyes were wide with wonder. "I've never seen anything like it." The structure hung in space, like a giant sculpture. It had smooth curves and sharp angles that seemed to flow together in ways that hurt to look at for too long. There were no obvious engines or weapons, no windows or docking bays. It was simply there, silent and waiting. "How old do you think it is?" Jake asked. Dr. Price was already taking pictures and measurements. "The metal composition is unlike anything in our databases. The design patterns, they're not from any known civilization. This could be millions of years old." Lisa ran another scan. "I'm not detecting any life signs. No power sources either. It's completely dead, but still in perfect condition," Ryan added. "No meteor damage, no wear from cosmic radiation. It's like time hasn't touched it." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years exploring space, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this ancient structure felt important, maybe even dangerous. "Amy, send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them what we've found. Include all sensor data and Dr. Price's initial assessment." "Already on it, Commander." As Amy worked on the message, Dr. Price continued his examination of the structure. He had spent years studying the ruins of dead civilizations, but this was different. The craftsmanship was too perfect, too advanced. Whoever built this had technology that made human engineering look like stone tools. "Commander, you need to see this," Dr. Price called out. His voice was shaking with excitement. Jake joined him at the analysis station. On the screen was a close-up image of the structure's surface. Carved into the dark metal were symbols and patterns that seemed familiar somehow. "These markings," Dr. Price said, pointing at the screen. "I've seen them before. Not exactly the same, but similar. There are cave paintings on Earth that use patterns like these. Ancient ones from before recorded history." "You're saying this thing is human-made?" Lisa asked. The idea seemed impossible. "I don't know what I'm saying yet, but these symbols match designs found in the oldest archaeological sites on Earth, sites that are over 50,000 years old." Ryan shook his head. "That's crazy." Humans barely had fire 50,000 years ago. We couldn't have built something like this. Modern humans couldn't, Dr. Price agreed. But what if there were others? What if humanity reached the stars long before we thought possible, then disappeared for some reason? The bridge fell silent as everyone tried to process this idea. The official history said that humans had only been in space for a few hundred years. Before that, they were stuck on Earth, slowly climbing from caves to cities to spaceships. But what if that history was wrong? Far across the galaxy, in the heart of the Zephyrian Empire, Supreme War Marshal Kethfer stood before a massive holographic display. The display showed the positions of thousands of warships, all painted in the blood-red colors of the Zephyrian fleet. Kethfer was a creature of war. His people had conquered dozens of star systems and enslaved entire species. They were strong, they were ruthless, and they were very, very hungry for more territory. The humans will be easy prey, he told his assembled officers. They are young and weak. Their ships are slow and their weapons are primitive. We will crush them quickly and make an example for the rest of the galaxy. The other officers nodded, in agreement. They had studied human military capabilities and found them lacking. Humanity had maybe 1,000 warships spread across dozens of worlds. The Zephyrian Empire had 10 times that number, and each ship was more advanced than anything in the human fleet. How long until the fleet is ready? Kethfer asked. 3 weeks, Supreme Marshal. We are gathering ships from across the Empire. This will be the largest fleet in our history. Kethfer smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Good. The humans will see our ships coming and know that resistance is hopeless. Some may surrender without a fight. Those who do will be allowed to live as slaves. Those who resist will be destroyed. The meeting ended, and the officers returned to their ships to prepare for war. None of them knew about the ancient structure that Jake Morrison's team had discovered. None of them knew that scattered throughout the galaxy were millions of similar structures, all connected by technology beyond their understanding. And none of them knew that these structures had been waiting for exactly this moment for millions of years. Back on Earth's Pride, the crew continued their study of the mysterious object. The more they learned, the more questions they had. The structure was clearly artificial, but it seemed to be made from materials that didn't exist in any periodic table. The symbols carved into its surface told a story that no one could read, but somehow felt familiar to human eyes. I want to go aboard, Dr. Price announced suddenly. Absolutely not, Jake replied immediately. We don't know if it's safe. There could be automated defenses, or the atmosphere could be toxic, or 100 other dangers. But think of what we might learn. This could rewrite everything we know about human history. Jake understood the scientist's excitement, but his job was to keep his crew safe. We'll continue scanning from here. Maybe we can learn more without taking unnecessary risks. As they argued, none of them noticed that deep within the ancient structure, systems that had been dormant for eons were beginning to stir. The arrival of human explorers had triggered something, a recognition protocol that identified them as the descendants of the structure's builders. Across the galaxy, other structures began to wake up. On dead worlds and in empty space, ancient machines opened mechanical eyes and began to scan their surroundings. They had been waiting so long for this moment, and now it had finally come. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had guardians. Very old, very patient, and very, very dangerous guardians. President Susan Carter sat in her office on Earth, reading Jake Morrison's report for the 3rd time. The words on the screen seemed impossible, but the evidence was clear. Humanity had found something ancient in space, something that might change everything they knew about their own history. She pressed a button on her desk and spoke to her assistant. Get me Dr. Helen Brooks. Tell her it's urgent and classified." Dr. Helen Brooks arrived at the presidential building 2 hours later. She was Earth's best expert on ancient cultures and lost civilizations. If anyone could make sense of Jake's discovery, it would be her. "Madam President, what can I do for you?" Helen asked as she entered the office. Susan handed her a tablet. "With Jake's report, read this. Then tell me if I should be worried or excited." Helen read the report carefully, her eyes growing wider with each page. When she finished, she looked up at the president with a mixture of wonder and fear. "This is incredible," Helen said. "If this is real, it means everything we know about human history is wrong. We need to study this structure immediately." "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. I'm putting together a special research team. You'll be in charge. Pick whoever you need and get to work." Within hours, Helen had assembled her team. Dr. Alan Reed was a physicist who specialized in advanced technologies. Maria Santos was a computer expert who could crack any code or system. Together with Helen's knowledge of ancient cultures, they made a perfect team for studying the mysterious structure. The team worked day and night, analyzing every piece of data that Jake's crew had sent back. The more they studied, the more amazed they became. The structure wasn't just old, it was incredibly advanced. Its technology was so far ahead of current human science that they could barely understand how it worked. "Look at these power readings," Alan said, pointing at his computer. "Screen. This thing is drawing energy from somewhere, but I can't figure out where. It's like it's pulling power directly from space itself." Maria was working on the symbols carved into the structure's surface. "I've run these markings through every database we have. They're not from any known language, but there are patterns, mathematical sequences, geometric designs. It's like a code, but one that's built into the very structure of the symbols themselves." Helen studied the images of the structure, comparing them to ancient ruins she had explored on distant worlds. "I've seen similar designs before," she said. "Not exactly the same, but close enough. There are ruins on at least 12 different human colonies that have the same basic style." "You think they're connected?" Alan asked. "I think they're all part of the same network, built by the same people for the same purpose." As the team worked, strange things began happening across human space. On the colony world of New Haven, miners reported finding massive underground chambers filled with inactive machinery. On the farming world of Green Valley, ancient stone circles that had been there for centuries suddenly began glowing with soft blue light. Captain Nicole Torres of the Earth Defense Force received dozens of similar reports from across human territory. Everywhere humans had settled, old ruins and mysterious structures were showing signs of activity. Most were just faint energy readings or unusual electromagnetic fields, but the pattern was clear. Something was waking up. Nicole called her superior, Admiral Frank Davis, with her concerns. "Sir, we're getting reports from all over human space. Ancient structures are becoming active. I think we might have a problem." "What kind of problem?" the Admiral asked. "I don't know yet, but these structures have been dormant for thousands of years. Now they're all waking up at the same time. That can't be a coincidence." Meanwhile, news of the strange activities was spreading beyond human space. The Altari Confederation, a peaceful alliance of several alien species, had been monitoring the energy signatures coming from human territory. Ambassador Velinov, the Altari's top diplomat, was deeply worried about what he was seeing. "These energy readings are unlike anything in our databases," he told the Confederation Council. "The power levels are enormous, far beyond anything humans should be capable of. If they're building weapons of this magnitude, they could threaten the entire galaxy." The council members whispered among themselves in fear. The Altari had maintained peace in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, but none had ever displayed this kind of raw power. "We must contact the humans immediately," Belanoth said. "We need to understand what they're doing before it's too late." Back on Earth, Helen's team was making breakthrough after breakthrough. Maria had managed to partially decode some of the symbols on the ancient structure. What she found made her hands shake as she typed her report. "The symbols aren't just decorative," she told Helen and Alan. "They're part of a massive computer program. The entire structure is one giant processor, and it's connected to something much larger." "Connected how?" Helen asked. "Quantum entanglement. Instantaneous communication across any distance. This structure is talking to others, maybe thousands of others, spread across the galaxy." Alan ran calculations on his computer. "If that's true, we're looking at a network that spans the entire known galaxy. The processing power would be unimaginable." Helen felt a chill as she realized the implications. A network that big could only have one purpose. It's designed to monitor and control everything that happens in the galaxy. While the research team worked to understand the ancient network, the Zephyrian Empire continued preparing for war. Supreme War Marshal Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as more and more ships joined his fleet. Soon he would have the largest armada in galactic history. "How many ships do we have now?" he asked his aide. "Over 8,000. Supreme Marshal. More arriving every day. The humans will not be able to resist such a force." Kethver smiled. He had conquered many worlds in his long career, but this would be his greatest victory. The destruction of humanity would send a message to every species in the galaxy. None would dare oppose the Zephyrian Empire after seeing what happened to those who resisted. "Begin final preparations," he ordered. "In 1 week, we move against Earth." On the research station orbiting Earth, Helen's team was working frantically to understand the ancient network before it was too late. They had discovered that the structures weren't just computers. They were something far more dangerous. The network was designed to learn, to adapt, and to respond to threats. "It's not just monitoring the galaxy," Helen explained to President Carter during an emergency briefing. "It's analyzing every civilization, every government, every military force, building detailed profiles of potential threats." "Threats to what?" the President asked. "To humanity. This entire network was built by our ancestors to protect their descendants, U.S." President Carter felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. If Helen was right, then humanity had inherited something incredibly powerful and potentially dangerous. The question was whether they could control it, or if it would control them. As night fell on Earth, the ancient network continued its awakening process. Across the galaxy, structures that had been silent for millions of years began to hum with energy. Deep space sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies as dormant systems came online. The Zephyrian fleet continued its advance toward human space, unaware that they were being watched by intelligences older than their entire civilization. The network had identified them as a threat to humanity, and it was already beginning to calculate the most efficient way to eliminate that threat. In the depths of space, ancient weapons that had never been used began charging their power systems. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had guardians, and those guardians had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. The awakening had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. Ben Hughes was feeding his cattle when the ground began to shake. At first, he thought it was just another small earthquake. The planet New Montana had them sometimes, nothing too serious. But this shake was different. It kept going and going, getting stronger instead of weaker. His wife Jenny ran out of their farmhouse, holding their baby daughter. "Ben, what's happening?" She called over the growing rumble. Before Ben could answer, the ground in their backfield began to crack open. Not like an earthquake crack, but clean and straight, like someone was cutting the earth with a giant knife. Steam rose from the opening, and a strange blue light glowed from deep underground. "Get to the truck," Ben shouted. "Now!" They ran toward their vehicle, but stopped when something massive began rising from the crack in the earth. It was metal, dark and smooth, covered in the same strange symbols that Dr. Helen Brooks was studying back on Earth. The thing kept rising, getting bigger and bigger, until it towered over their farm like a metal mountain. Similar scenes were playing out across New Montana and dozens of other human worlds. Ancient structures that had been buried for thousands of years were pushing their way to the surface. Some were as small as houses, others were the size of cities. All of them hummed with energy and glowed with that same blue light. Captain Nicole Torres stood in the command center of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching reports flood in from across human space. Every few minutes, another colony reported the same thing. Ancient structures rising from the ground, activating after being dormant for countless years. "How many worlds are affected?" she asked her communications officer. "All of them, Captain. Every single human colony is reporting similar phenomena. Even uninhabited systems are showing massive energy spikes where we've never detected anything before." Nicole felt a cold fear settle in her stomach. Whatever was happening, it was big. Bigger than anything humanity had ever faced. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Pete Walsh, looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm detecting movement in the Kepler system. Massive gravitational disturbances, like something the size of a moon, just appeared out of nowhere. Send a probe. I want to know what's out there." Light years away, Ambassador Velinov of the Altari Confederation was having an emergency meeting with his council. The energy readings coming from human space were getting stronger by the hour, and the Altari scientists were terrified by what they were seeing. "The power levels are beyond anything in our records," Dr. Kilter reported to the assembled council members. "These readings suggest weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. If the humans have developed such technology, they could threaten every civilization in the galaxy." Velinov felt old and tired. He had spent centuries maintaining peace between the different species of the galaxy. Now it seemed like that peace was about to end. "We must contact Earth immediately," he said. "We need to understand what they're doing before fear drives other species to attack them first." On Earth, Dr. Helen Brooks was working around the clock to understand the ancient network. Her team had made incredible progress in the past few days, but each answer only led to more questions. "The network is definitely responding to something," Maria Santos reported as she studied the quantum communication patterns. "It's like all these structures are talking to each other, sharing information at the speed of light." Dr. Alan Reed looked up from his calculations. "Actually, faster than light. They're using quantum entanglement to communicate instantly across any distance. The entire network can share information in real time, no matter how far apart the individual nodes are." Helen studied the data streaming across her screens. The ancient network was vast beyond imagination. Every human world, every system they had explored, even empty regions of space that seemed completely barren, all contained parts of this incredible machine. "It's not just a communication network," she realized. "It's a defense system. The biggest, most advanced defense system ever built." President Susan Carter received Helen's latest report with growing alarm. The implications were staggering. If Helen was right, then humanity's ancestors had built a galaxy-spanning weapons network millions of years ago, and now it was waking up. "Can we control it?" the president asked during an emergency video conference. "I don't think so," Helen replied honestly. "This system is far more advanced than anything we have. It seems to be operating according to its own programming, following instructions left by whoever built it. And who built it? Based on the symbol analysis and the quantum signature patterns, I believe it was built by an ancient human civilization. Our ancestors, but not the ones we know about from history books. These were humans who reached the stars millions of years ago, then disappeared. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian Empire was moving closer to human space. Supreme War Marshal Kethfer stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final ships join his armada. He now commanded over 10,000 warships, the largest fleet in galactic history. "Begin the final approach," he ordered his navigation. "Officer, we attack Earth in 72 hours. His intelligence officer, Commander Zarkoth, approached with a concerned expression. "Supreme Marshal, we're detecting unusual energy readings from human space. Our sensors are picking up massive power signatures from their colonies." Kethver waved dismissively. "Probably just their pitiful attempts to prepare defenses. It will make no difference. Nothing they have can stand against this fleet." But Zarkoth wasn't so sure. The energy readings were unlike anything in their databases. Whatever the humans were doing, it was generating more power than some stars. That seemed impossible for such a primitive species. Back on New Montana, Ben Hughes and his family watched from a safe distance as the ancient structure continued to rise from their land. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, covered in flowing designs that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. "What do you think it is?" Jenny asked, bouncing their baby to keep her calm. "I don't know," Ben replied, "but I've got a feeling we're about to find out." As if responding to his words, the structure suddenly went completely silent. The humming stopped, the blue light dimmed, and for a moment everything was peaceful. Then new lights began to appear on its surface, brighter and more focused than before. Similar changes were happening across the galaxy. The ancient network had finished its startup sequence and was now fully online for the first time in millions of years. Every structure, every hidden node, every secret installation was now connected and operational. Deep in space, Dr. Helen Brooks made the most important discovery of her career. She had finally cracked the main communication protocol of the ancient network, and what she found made her blood run cold. "It's scanning everything," she told her team. "Every ship, every planet, every civilization in the galaxy. It's building detailed profiles of potential threats to humanity." "What kind of threats?" Alan asked Dot before Helen could answer, her computer screen filled with new data. The network had detected the approaching Zephyrian fleet and classified it as an extinction-level threat to the human species. Estimated time to threat neutralization appeared on the screen. 72 hours. "Oh no," Helen whispered. "It's not just a defense system. It's a doomsday weapon, and it's about to fire." Across the galaxy, ancient weapons that had slept for eons began to power up. The network had identified its first target in millions of years, and it was preparing to demonstrate why humanity's ancestors had been confident that their descendants would survive any threat. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that some prey fight back. And when humanity fights back, they don't just win. They make sure their enemies never threaten anyone ever again. The galaxy held its breath as ancient powers stirred, and the greatest military force in known history sailed unknowingly toward its doom. The Eternal Watch began its work, and the entire galaxy felt it happen. On distant worlds that had been empty for millions of years, asteroid fields suddenly rearranged themselves into perfect geometric patterns. Gas giants changed their spin, moving in ways that broke every law of physics. Even the stars themselves began to flicker and pulse in rhythm. As if responding to some cosmic heartbeat, Commander Zarkoth of the Zephyrian fleet stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Supreme Marshal, you need to see this," he called to Kethvar. The War Marshal strode over to the sensor station, his confidence still unshaken. "What is it, Commander?" "The stars, sir. They're moving. On the main display, dozens of stars showed. Impossible behavior. Some were brightening and dimming in perfect sequence. Others were shifting position in space, something that should take millions of years, but was happening in minutes. Sensor malfunction, Kethver declared. Stars don't just move around. Fix your equipment. But it wasn't a malfunction. Across the galaxy, ancient installations that had been mistaken for natural phenomena for countless ages were revealing their true nature. What looked like dead asteroids were actually dormant weapon platforms. What seemed like empty space contained invisible structures the size of planets. The first active defense appeared when the Zephyrian fleet was still 3 days from Earth. A small patrol group led by Captain Vexstar was scouting ahead of the main force when their sensors detected what looked like a simple asteroid floating in space. Just space rock, Vexstar told his crew. Move around it and continue on course. The asteroid was roughly spherical and about the size of a city block. Nothing special about it, just another piece of cosmic debris. But as the Zephyrian ships began to pass by, the asteroid suddenly changed. Its surface split open like a flower, revealing a core of brilliant white energy. Lines of force that human science couldn't even name reached out and touched the 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts. The ships didn't explode or burn. They simply stopped existing, vanishing from space as if they had never been there at all, Captain. Vexstar had just enough time to scream before his ship followed the others into nothingness. The asteroid closed back up and returned to looking like ordinary space rock, leaving no trace that 3 massive warships had ever been there. The message reached Supreme War Marshal Kethver an hour later. 3 of his most powerful ships had vanished without warning, destroyed by something that seemed impossible. What do you mean they just disappeared? Kethver demanded that the communications officer was pale with fear. That's what the sensor logs show, Supreme Marshal. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone. No explosion, no debris, nothing. It's like they were erased from existence. For the first time since planning this invasion, Kethver felt a touch of doubt. The humans were supposed to be weak and primitive. They weren't supposed to have weapons that could make entire ships disappear. On Earth, Dr. Helen Brooks was trying desperately to establish better communication with the ancient network. She had managed to access some of its systems, but the intelligence behind it was so far advanced that she could barely understand its responses. Please, she typed into her computer terminal. We need to understand what you're doing. Can you explain your purpose? The response came back immediately, but in symbols that took her translation software several minutes to decode. When it finally appeared on her screen, Helen felt her heart skip a beat. Threat assessment complete. Zephyrian Empire classified as extinction-level danger to human species. Initiating full defensive protocols. Estimated time to threat neutralization. 47 hours. Helen tried again. What are full defensive protocols? What exactly are you planning to do? The response was longer this time, and when Helen read the translation, she had to sit down to keep from falling over. We are the Eternal Watch, created by your ancestors to ensure the continuation of the human species. We have observed this galaxy for 4 million years, learning about every civilization and cataloging every threat. The Zephyrian Empire seeks to completely destroy humanity. This cannot be permitted. We will remove this threat permanently. President Susan Carter received Helen's report during an emergency cabinet meeting. The room fell silent as she read the message aloud. It's going to destroy the entire Zephyrian Empire? Defense Secretary Paul Martinez asked in shock. That's what it says, Helen replied through the video link. This system doesn't just defend against attacks. It eliminates threats completely, making sure they can never be a danger again. Secretary of State Linda Hayes spoke up. We have to stop it. If we wipe out an entire civilization, the galaxy will see us as monsters. I don't think we can stop it, Helen said quietly. This system is operating according to programming that's millions of years old. It sees the Zephyrians as a threat to human survival, so it's going to remove that threat. Period. Meanwhile, Captain Nicole Torres was leading a desperate mission to try to understand what was happening on the front lines. Her ship, the Earth Vessel Defender, was equipped with the most advanced sensors in the human fleet. What she found in space terrified her more than any enemy could. Captain, you need to see this. Her sensor officer called out. On the main screen appeared the wreckage of a Zephyrian patrol fleet. Or rather, what was left of it. The ships hadn't been destroyed in any conventional sense. They looked like they had been taken apart molecule by molecule, their hulls unwoven like someone had carefully undone every weld and rivet. What could do this? Nicole asked Dot before anyone could answer. They detected survivors. A single Zephyrian escape pod drifted among the debris. Its occupants still alive, but clearly traumatized. Nicole ordered the pod brought aboard, and when they opened it, they found a young Zephyrian officer named Sub-Commander Kelter. He was shaking uncontrollably and kept repeating the same words over and over. They came from nowhere. Weapons that weren't there, then were there, then gone again. Our shields meant nothing. Our armor meant nothing. They just unmade us. Nicole tried to calm him down. Who attacked you? What did you see? Kelter looked at her with eyes full of terror. The void itself fought us. Space itself became our enemy. We fired at shadows, and they fired back with the power of stars. More reports began coming in from across the battle zone. Entire Zephyrian fleets were being destroyed by weapons that appeared from empty space, struck with impossible precision, then vanished without a trace. The attacks were so swift and so complete that most ships didn't even have time to send distress signals. Back in the heart of the Zephyrian Empire, panic was beginning to spread. Supreme War Marshal Kethver's mighty armada was being torn apart by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't understand, and couldn't fight. Emperor Thakvar himself called an emergency meeting of the High Command. What is happening to our fleets? He demanded. We don't know, Your Imperial Majesty, Admiral Morcath reported. Our ships are being destroyed faster than we can track them. The humans appear to have access to weapon technology beyond anything in our databases. Impossible, the Emperor roared. They're primitives. Stone Age savages with crude metal ships. But the evidence was undeniable. In less than 24 hours, the Zephyrian Empire had lost over half of its invasion fleet. Ships that had taken years to build were being erased from existence in seconds. Across the galaxy, other civilizations were watching in horror. The energy signatures being detected from the battle zones were beyond anything ever recorded. Whoever was destroying the Zephyrian Empire had access to power sources that could reshape reality itself. Ambassador Velinoth of the Altari Confederation called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the crisis. The humans have revealed capabilities that threaten the stability of our entire galaxy, Velinoth announced to the assembled delegates. We must act quickly to understand their intentions before they turn these weapons on the rest of us. In the depths of space, ancient machines continued their work. The Eternal Watch had identified its target and was systematically removing every trace of the Zephyrian military. Weapons platforms that had never fired a shot in millions of years were operating at peak efficiency, their targeting systems perfected by eons of patient observation. The galaxy was learning that humanity had guardians. Guardians who had been preparing for this moment since before most current civilizations had even discovered fire. And the Zephyrian Empire was about to discover what happened to those who threatened the children of Earth. President Susan Carter stood alone in her office, staring out at the night sky. Somewhere out there, an ancient intelligence was reshaping the galaxy in humanity's name. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than anything she had ever. CARRIED, Dr. Helen Brooks, had been trying to communicate with the Eternal Watch for hours. Finally, she managed to establish a clear connection with the network's central intelligence. "We need to make a choice," the ancient system told her through streams of translated symbols. "Your ancestors designed us to offer this choice to their descendants when the time came." "What choice?" Helen typed back. "Integration or independence. We can merge your consciousness with ours. You would gain access to technologies and knowledge beyond your current understanding. You would become the dominant force in this galaxy, perhaps in the entire universe. Or you can remain as you are, and we will return to dormancy after removing the current threat." Helen felt her hands shake as she typed her response. "What would happen to us if we choose integration? You would evolve beyond your current physical limitations. Your minds would expand to encompass the knowledge of millions of years. You would become something greater than you are now. But would we still be human?" There was a long pause before the system responded. "That is for you to decide. Your ancestors faced the same choice long ago. They chose to become one with their technology, to transcend physical existence. But they built us to give their descendants a different option if they wished." Helen immediately called President Carter with this information. Within an hour, the president had assembled every world leader, every colony governor, and every important scientist on Earth for an emergency video conference. "The choice belongs to all of humanity," President Carter announced to the gathered representatives. "We have perhaps hours to decide the future of our entire species." The debate was intense and emotional. Some argued for integration, claiming it would solve all of humanity's problems and make them safe forever. Others insisted that becoming something else would mean the death of humanity as they knew it. Dr. Allen Reed spoke for many when he said, "If we're not human anymore, then what's the point of saving humanity?" While the debate raged on Earth, the Eternal Watch continued its work. The Zephyrian Empire was collapsing faster than anyone thought possible. Supreme War Marshal Kethvar's mighty fleet had been reduced to scattered groups of survivors fleeing. In panic, Emperor Thakvar himself tried to broadcast a surrender to the humans, but there was no one to receive it. The ancient defense network wasn't interested in negotiations or surrender. It had classified the Zephyrian Empire as an extinction-level threat, and it was methodically removing that threat from existence. In less than 48 hours, the most powerful military force in the galaxy had been completely destroyed. Not defeated, not scattered, but erased. The few surviving Zephyrian worlds sent immediate messages of unconditional surrender to Earth, begging for mercy from the terrible guardians that protected humanity. Captain Nicole Torres watched the end of the war from her ship near the former battle zone. Where massive fleets had fought just hours before, there was now only empty space. The Eternal Watch had even cleaned up the debris, leaving no trace that the battle had ever happened. "It's like they never existed," her sensor officer reported. "No wreckage, no energy signatures, nothing. Just empty space." Nicole felt a chill. This level of power was beyond anything she had imagined possible. Humanity now had guardians that could erase entire civilizations from existence, and that thought terrified her almost as much as it amazed her. On Earth, President Carter made her decision. After consulting with world leaders and listening to the heated debates, she chose to speak for all of humanity. "We decline integration," she told Dr. Helen Brooks. "Ask the Eternal Watch to return to dormancy. We choose to remain human, whatever that means for our future." Helen relayed the message to the ancient network. The response came back almost immediately, and when Helen read it, she smiled for the first time in days. choice acknowledged and approved. Your ancestors would be proud. Independence has always been humanity's greatest strength. We return to dormancy, but remain vigilant. The galaxy now knows that humanity is protected. This knowledge will serve as a deterrent to future threats. Across human space, the ancient structures began to power down. The blue lights faded, the humming stopped, and the massive installations sank back into the ground or faded from sight. But everyone knew they were still there, still watching, still ready to protect humanity if the need arose. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, Ambassador Velinoth of the Altari Confederation arrived at Earth with a fleet of diplomatic ships. Representatives from dozens of other species followed, close behind. The first meeting was held in the United Nations building in New York. Velinoth, a tall creature with 4 arms and skin like silver metal, spoke for the galactic community. "We come seeking understanding," he said through his translation device. "The power you have displayed has changed everything. We need to know your intentions toward the rest of the galaxy." President Carter, flanked by Dr. Helen Brooks and other advisors, chose her words carefully. "We have no desire to conquer or control other species. The defense network that protected us was built by our ancestors for one purpose only, to ensure humanity's survival. It activates only when we face extinction. But you could activate it whenever you chose," pointed out Ambassador Crickstall of the Hegemony Coalition. "You could use it to conquer us all." "We could," Helen Brooks replied. "But we won't. That's not who we are. We chose independence over power, remember? We want to coexist peacefully with all species." The negotiations continued for weeks. New treaties were signed, establishing humanity as a protected species under the watchful eye of their ancient guardians. Trade agreements were negotiated, with many species eager to build good relationships with the humans, who commanded such incredible power. But the most important change was in how other species viewed humanity. No longer were humans seen as young, primitives barely worthy of notice. Now they were respected, feared, and in some cases, revered. On the farming world of New Montana, Ben Hughes stood in his field, looking at the spot where the ancient structure had risen from the earth. There was no sign of it now, just ordinary soil and grass. But he knew it was still there, sleeping beneath his feet, ready to wake if humanity ever needed it again. His wife Jenny joined him, carrying their baby daughter. "Think it's really over?" she asked. Ben put his arm around her and looked up at the stars. "The war is over. But I think our real story is just beginning." Across the galaxy, other ancient networks began responding to signals from the Eternal Watch. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe after all. Their prehistoric ancestors had built similar networks in other galaxies, and those systems were now sending greetings across the cosmic void. The message was simple but profound. The children of Earth were not alone, had never been alone, and would never be alone. Wherever humans went in the vast universe, their ancient guardians would be there, watching and protecting. As President Carter stood on the balcony of her office that night, looking up at the stars, she realized that humanity had inherited more than just a defense system. They had inherited a responsibility to use their power wisely, to be worthy of the sacrifice their ancestors had made. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had awakened, and with them, guardians older than memory had opened their eyes to watch over their children among the stars. The age of humanity had begun.